So we're still missing just a few committee members, so we'll give it just a little bit longer to see if we can get a few more coming in. All right, we're still missing one person, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. She'll probably trickle in a little while. So let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Open Space Advisory Committee for the Town of Superior meeting to order for July 12th, 2017. Before we jump into public comment, we need to make a motion to adjust the agenda, but for a little bit of background on that and the and all the committee responsibilities, the town attorney is here to give us just a quick brief on that topic. Yep.
Would you want to go ahead and amend the agenda according to how you want it to go, and then I'm happy to talk.
Okay. So just a little bit of background about why we're amending the agenda. One of our topic item number 3, discussion recommendation. Zaharias review the proposed concept plan and discuss OSAC's position on the property. I was informed today by the assistant town manager that the town's general policy and standard operating procedures preclude the advisory committees from reviewing concept plans. So this is something that would typically be outside the bounds of what we should be reviewing. So we can still discuss properties, we can discuss value for open space related to properties, but we are not going to review and discuss the concept plan this evening. So we'll go ahead and make an adjustment. So I'll make a motion to amend the agenda, item number 3, to now read discussion recommendation, Zaharias and Hodgson Harris Reservoir, review open space value related to the vicinity of these properties. Do we have a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
Okay. Is Is there any question or discussion for anybody? Or are there any questions specifically for why we need to do this for the town attorney? Or would we like her to explain why we need to do this? Okay. If there's no discussion, then all in favor of amending the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Unanimous. In that case, I think we're ready to proceed.
Sure. And this is, hi, let me introduce myself. I'm Hillary Graham, town attorney. So I'm here coincidentally, but also it's fortuitous, the timing, because this issue regarding amending the agenda came up. So I'm happy to answer questions about that. And then I also wanted to just take the opportunity for visiting all the advisory committees of the town to kind of refresh on what the role is, how you can assist the Board of Trustees, answer questions you might have about where the lines are drawn, because I think it's a good thing. We have some really active vocal committees, and it's a kind of a growing pains thing where we need to make sure everybody understands the role that they're playing, so we can all, we're all on the same team, and we can all work in the same direction. So I'm happy to answer questions, or I have a quick presentation, and I don't want to derail your agenda because I know you have plenty of business tonight. So
I'd say let's just do a quick presentation, and if there's any questions, we can
Okay.
go from there.
Okay. Yeah, so what I really wanted to talk about is, and this is specific to the Open Space Committee. It'll be slightly different according to each of the committees that we visit, but the understanding the role of the Open Space Committee, as Open Space Advisory Committee, requires understanding this concept that I think you'll hear Kendra or I talk about a lot, which is legislative acts versus quasi-judicial acts. And the advisory committee role really needs to live in this realm of legislative acts. You're advising the town board relative to legislative decisions. And there's lots of things we can point to show that. A couple things that I think are helpful and probably good to brush up on now and again are the establishing resolution. So that's the resolution that the town board passed most recently in 2012 to form the Open Space Advisory Committee. It set out the specific responsibilities and duties. I have copies here if we want to just pass one down. And then also the annual work plan. So a work plan is presented to the Board of Trustees each year by this committee, and the board approves it. And so we're just going to look through those to talk about how those are reinforcing the legislative nature of what this committee does. So just as a quick overview, legislative acts have broad applicability. They're prospective in nature. They affect the rights of the public generally. They don't bear on individual property rights or individual rights in general. They're matters permanent or general in character, and they're not usually restricted to identifiable groups of people. So we're going to contrast that with a quasi-judicial act, which, as you hear, has the word judicial in it. And the reason the distinction matters is it relates to how decisions are reviewed. So a legislative act is not really reviewed by the courts. It's given great deference, whereas a quasi-judicial act falls within the judicial category. Courts are very able and do certainly take the opportunity when asked to review quasi-judicial acts. So when the committee is acting in a legislative way, there's very little chance for an appeal to a court. However, if this committee or any committee or the Board of Trustees or the Planning Commission or anybody acts in a quasi-judicial way, there are specific parties, and those parties have recourse to the courts if they don't agree with the decision. So just to kind of flesh out what quasi-judicial means, it's usually an act where notice is required, where public hearing is required, where criteria are applied to specific facts. In the land use context, it's often commenced by an application of a property owner seeking permission to do something with his or her property. And it's applying broad policy in light of ascertained facts. It's determining rights, duties, or obligations of specific individuals. And you can see it's a bit of a term of art, I think, to get your head around how acting legislatively is different than acting in a quasi-judicial way. But the documents I passed out will sort of support that if you want to look at those, starting with the establishing resolution. So this committee was initially started in 2001, I believe. But in 2012, the provisions of the code governing advisory committees were adopted. And so then the committee was sort of reestablished under those provisions of the code, which are found in Article 12 of Chapter 2 of the code. So this resolution 2012-36, sets out the committee's specific duties and responsibilities, examining and making recommendations to the Board of Trustees regarding the preservation of lands in town for open space purposes. And it gives you, this committee, specific factors to consider. The committee also advises on master plan and comprehensive plan. It considers coordination with regional trails planned by Boulder County and other entities within and around the town. And upon request, it can comment on development plans. But generally speaking, the flavor of those duties are legislative, broad, prospective, not bearing on individual properties. A good example of a legislative act is the 2005 report that this committee put together. It identified all of the undeveloped parcels in the town, and it kind of rank ordered them according to their attributes, identifying what might be desirable for open space and why. And so, again, that was broad and prospective. It was in request to what the board asked the committee to do at that time. It was submitted to the board as a recommendation, and it kind of stayed there. And I think the board has revisited it and reviewed it and used it as guidance in the years since then. So that's the proper functioning of a legislative committee or a committee advisory to legislative acts. The reason we want to stay away from the committee venturing into quasi-judicial decision-making is for the reasons I identified. It can open the town to possible liability. There are some things to keep in mind, that it's not appropriate to make a recommendation when a development application is pending. And identifying the starting point of pending can be a little bit tricky, but we take sort of a conservative view of that and consider even the concept plan stage to be a pending development application. So for that reason, we asked OSAC to refrain from commenting on a pending development application. There are cases, I mean, I'm trying to be brief here, so I won't go into the details, but I'm happy to answer questions. But there are cases where this type of activity has created a cause of action where there might not otherwise have been one. And I'm not going to say, you know, this is an open session and I'm not giving legal advice, but I would just suffice to say there's no need to raise the potential for a lawsuit when OSAC wants to do the right thing. And I think we just need to channel your efforts in the right directions. So, and then I think the other thing I wanted to look at quickly is your work plan for 2017. It identified, I think it's number 9, that you're interested in updating that 2005 report. So again, that's totally appropriate, but I think take that update in the view of the initial 2005 report, which is that it's a broad update. It looks through town properties as a whole. Mm-hmm. And I would remind you that given the resolution establishing your duties, it is proper for OSAC to consider the cost to purchase or maintain land. So part of your duty is to consider current zoning and how your actions might affect the value of a piece of property. So, and we can provide more specific advice as we go forward. Just want you to kind of keep that in the back of your head, that the town only acquires property two ways. It either buys it at fair market value or it condemns it, at which point it also needs to pay fair market value. So keep in mind that things that you do could potentially affect the value of a piece of property. And as I said before, I'm sure you want to direct your efforts in a way that's consistent with the town goals. So I think I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to answer questions. And I hope you understand why we've kind of tried to pull back on that agenda item 3 at this point. Okay.
So I do have just a couple questions.
Yeah.
So it was my understanding in reading through things that I know the Planning Commission is denoted as a quasi-judicial body.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my understanding that it was these bodies that would be designated as either legislative or quasi-judicial, and that all the other planning or all the other committees, including OSAC, were legislative committees. So you're saying that even though we are not a quasi-judicial committee, it's still possible for us to venture in, to be considered to making a quasi-judicial action?
Well, not so much that OSAC would be taking quasi-judicial action, but that your actions would be affecting the town's ability to take quasi-judicial action. So if we look ahead to a development plan that's submitted to the Board of Trustees, the board's consideration, well, even before that, Planning Commission's consideration of that development application is quasi-judicial. So OSAC, while separate, still an instrumentality of the town, has the ability to potentially cloud that process. And it is a bit attenuated. I mean, I'm not going to pretend it's not, but we're lawyers, right? We're supposed to anticipate worst case scenarios. So this is in an abundance of caution.
Okay.
And I want to, just a quick point of clarification, Planning Commission's unique because it has statutory duties that are quasi-judicial.
Exactly.
It also acts in this advisory legislative capacity. It kind of wears two hats. So they're going to hear much of this
Yeah.
too.
They just wear the hat that we don't in the quasi-judicial standing. And then the second question is, in looking at our work plan, we have in our second page in the ongoing section, the fourth bullet, to monitor Hodgson-Harris Reservoir habitation, and also in the second bullet, to continue to monitor and provide input on the downtown Superior development and other town developments. So it would appear to me that the board-approved work plan for OSAC would include us reviewing these development plans and providing open space input as necessary and as appropriate.
Point me to that second one you read. I missed it.
It was the second bullet under ongoing on the second page.
Oh, gotcha.
Continue to monitor and provide input on the downtown Superior development and other town developments.
Right.
So in everything.
Well, I think OSAC can provide input in ways other than acquisition of property. So on downtown Superior development, for instance, you can certainly provide input on the parks, how you envision the parks being used, how you envision it, trail connectivity, things like that. It's when the discussion of OSAC turns toward specific pieces of private property that may be of interest for acquisition that we get into a little bit of hot water.
So just so I'm understanding where the line is, if we're discussing a property and its value as open space or the best way to preserve sections of it for open space or anything along those lines, as long as we're not making a recommendation to acquire it once it has been submitted for some type of application.
Well, I'd go even broader than that. I would say, certainly make recommendations, but once a property is sort of under an active development application, then you need to step aside.
Sometimes I think the pickle becomes that we don't always know when it is under active.
Well, I think staff can inform you.
Okay.
And it's a fair point about the work plan. I think kind of knowing what we know now, we might encourage the board to more carefully tailor those types of duties to make it more clear where the line is. Did you have something to add?
I was going to add to that. much like we did with Tract H, is I think we'll continue to try to bring things forward if they get to that FDP stage, like we did with Parks 1 and 2. So know that I think there will always be that level of engaging the committees. Now we have had a couple of projects where the board has said we're ready to push forward. We kind of got like that on Wildflower Park. Where there maybe could have been one more review stage with all the committees. The board said, we're going, we're ready to go. But I do think, and it's my understanding that at the FDP stages, all the committees, Parks Rec, Open Space, CAPS,
RCAC.
RCAC, will do some level of review at the FDP stage. So there will be that opportunity before it's final. And that's been, I think, consistent with what the board has done in the past.
Thank you. And that kind of sanctioned review, almost like a referral out to a referring agency, that's certainly appropriate. It's kind of having the issue bubble up from the committee itself where it becomes problematic. So if it's something the board asks you to do and you're reporting back, I think that's different than OSAC taking the initiative to really push an issue maybe at the wrong time. Good?
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Okay. Well, we have an amended agenda. With that, we will move forward with public comment. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I appreciate seeing such a large turnout. If you'd like to come and make a comment, just kind of wave your hand. We'll call you up to the podium and just state your name, your address, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, if that's possible. So, please. Oh, and I believe we've asked that if you do speak, also sign in on the sign-in sheet.
Number 2.
Thank
My
you.
name's Megan Anderson. I live at 1325 South Boyero Court. And after hearing the town attorney speak, it kind of negates what I really wanted to say. But I just, this is an issue that is a concern to me because this is something that we need to make sure that we get right. So it sounds to me that I might be a little late in coming to the process to be actually talk about this, to say I'm really concerned about the use of what we do with our space here in Superior. I've lived here for 24 years, so I am very much invested in this community, and it does matter and mean a lot to me. Like I said, I guess the only thing I can say after listening to the town attorney speak, it doesn't sound like I have much of a voice to say too much about a lot of things other than to say I can't stress enough that what we choose to do with the land in Superior is something we need to get right. And so if things are being pushed farther along more rapidly than the residents in our community are aware to actually have a voice, that's a concern. So I'm a little concerned if things have moved so far ahead that we can't have a voice. I would like to at least express that concern that I have as a resident. That those in the community need to be able to be aware that decisions are possibly being made, that we won't have an opportunity to actually speak about whatever it is that we would like to choose or hope to see the vision for our town. And I guess that's all I can say in light of what our town attorney has said. Yes? Go ahead.
So, I think maybe readjust because you're actually early. The time to comment, if this concept plan moves forward, is going to be when it's pending before the board. So you certainly will have public comment opportunity then. It's just that we need to refocus from the OSAC process to the board process. And there will be a robust process then.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
and-
I then let it be noted, duly noted, that I think that there needs to be information sent out to the community at large to be aware, because I don't think most of the people in our community are aware that there are huge decisions being made, and that's, I'll just leave it at that. But just let it be stated, there's somebody really concerned about what we're doing with our land that's here, and we can only get this right once. We screw it up and it's over. So, and to thank you for your time and effort in being concerned about what we designated as open space. I appreciate the time and effort that you put into that. Thank you.
And just
Can I just chime in for a second? And Hillary, you can correct me if you disagree as town attorney, but the limitation on the discussions here is placed upon the town of Superior as a government. You're a citizen. You've got First Amendment rights. Come speak at public comment and let us hear what you have to say. Okay? Yeah, so
This is just the last thing I want to say. I'll give you one more thing. I don't know what year it was, but I do know I had a family member tease me about staying in Superior for so long. And saying, what the heck, what are you doing? You know, I come from a family of people that own a lot of property in a lot of different places. And I sent him a picture, and I don't know if it was U.S. News and World Report. Somebody in here might remember that's been here as long as I have, but I don't know if it was maybe 10 years back, 7, somewhere in there, time flies, where Louisville was voted #1 city town in America to reside. And then it listed the ones that came in close second and third. And the only difference between Louisville and Superior when you measured them up was that we didn't have our own police force here. That was the only discrepancy. But the things that it listed was not how many apartments do you have and what kind of shopping do you have. The things that were listed were the open space. Those were the pieces that actually made this part of Colorado, this part of the United States, a place that was considered desirable to live in. So as people are thinking about that, it would be nice to go back to that article, read it again if I could find it, and to say, you know, people all across America at one time thought one of the shining stars of this particular community was the fact that they planned for, prepared for, considered, and provided parcels of land to be set aside for open space and for that type of thing. So I don't know if that arms anybody with any ideas, but thank you. And
Absolutely, Trustee Lasis is correct. I mean, the public can say what the public will. But my point was, and I think it's worth repeating, is also comment at the board stage.
Yes.
So public coming here now, feel free to comment now, but also feel free to bring your concerns to the board.
Yeah, and know that even if you do come here and provide your comments, it's not falling on deaf ears. The more we hear from the community, the better we can represent your viewpoints. And the more viewpoints we hear, the louder and stronger our voice becomes to the board. So just because we can't make an action right now doesn't mean that your voice isn't doing anything positive. It certainly is making a difference, and we take it into consideration. And as Patrick Hammer, the Director of Parks and Recreation, mentioned, that when a formal application does come to the board and committee input is sought, that's when we can take everything that we've heard between, let's say, now and whenever an application is put forth, and we can put all of that together into a strong recommendation. So everything you're saying is still being heard loud and clear. So, anybody else?
I would just like to clarify, were you, I know you were speaking of open space in general. Was there a specific property that was of high concern? Just so that is noted.
yes, I don't know if this is, I don't know if I should, I don't know what protocol for this kind of stuff. I'm a bunch of attorneys, both my parents were attorneys, so I still don't know protocol. Yes, I'm concerned because some of the discussion that I'm hearing are involving closing streets, putting in lights in certain places. I'm seeing so much signage everywhere that it looks like it's almost, just even driving down McCaslin, just in this last little bit, I must have counted 10 signs. So if there's, we talk about noise pollution, and I think there's a certain thing about signage pollution, and I'm beginning to really notice that in Superior. Yes, I'm concerned about two particular issues, and to have lived here as long as I have, and to all of a sudden start hearing conversations about having to change routes and closing down streets, and I can't help but tie it to the fact that somebody wants to purchase a parcel of land and develop it, and I don't think it's in the best interest of our community. I'm concerned about the property that is off of 88th, because that street, I can hear when emergency vehicles go by. And trust me, Superior needs that road open, not more populated, because we are developing all this. It's going to be harder for emergency vehicles to get to Vista. So I'm really aware of the traffic that comes. So yes, I'm very much concerned about what is being done with the property that is off of 88th. So I don't know if I'm keeping it.
Yep. For the record, that's
the property's name,
Yeah.
or I don't know if there's a liability with that, but I'm just very concerned that I'm hopeful that our town board, our trustees, are concerned about the community on the whole and not in the best interests of maybe one or two individuals. because I honestly am very, very concerned about that particular parcel of land for two reasons. One, like I said, is it's a safety issue. And we have a wonderful hospital. It'll be too bad if we can't really ever get to it. And that road at 88th was never designed to be heavy traffic flow like it's going to be turned into. And the second thing, we do have some residents that have actually been going out and filming and seeing what exactly is out there on that property. And it would be interesting to know, do we have any endangered species that already live there? I mean, it's a possibility that we do. And I just, I'm really, really concerned about, I think it's somewhat irresponsible to talk about closing streets off at the same time you're talking about developing a piece of property. Because, and I don't want to convolute one issue with the other, but to me, I can't help but see the connection between the two. So the particular piece of property that I'm concerned about tonight just happens to be the property on 88th. But I appreciate your efforts in any piece of property that we have, that we just are mindful with what we do with the land that we do have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Willie Manderson. I live at 1325 South Barrett Court, and I've actually been going to the town board meetings, so I'm not coming here as in lieu of addressing and the trustees know that I come. I've always thought that this property would be a good place for an open space with the reservoir. It's really not a good location for development anyway, and I'm somebody that I'd like to see a lot more open space if we could afford it. I know that there's a financial aspect, but the more open space, the better in my mind. And to me, this is an ideal location for consideration. I guess I had the same. I had to make sure I understood if what we're doing is what she referred to as a quasi-judicial act. I'm not sure exactly. I mean, are we kind of moving into that arena, or I was just trying to understand, or is
Anything,
where are we in this? What do I need to tell the open space without wandering into
My comments were to the committee.
Okay.
You can say whatever you want.
Well, I can say whatever I want.
Yeah. I think to answer your question, if we made a recommendation on the property off of 88th, known as the Sir Harry's property, if we did that, we would be venturing into that quasi-judicial area. So we as a committee need to not do that. But you can certainly talk to us about it, and when we are free to make that recommendation, we will certainly make the recommendation that the committee sees appropriate.
Well, I'm a big open space supporter anyway, not just for this property, but for other properties. And the reason is if you think what's happened in areas like Southern California where you create this huge sprawl and there's no open space, well, the people that live there have to live with the fact there's no, it's almost suffocating. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this would be a great location, as well as others. I'd like to see other areas set aside for open space. So I'm a big supporter, and I hope you continue to look at not only this location, but other locations for open space. So I appreciate your efforts, and I think open space makes for a really good community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
Well, I'm glad there's a First Amendment right. My name is Kathy Cardi-Mullen. I'm at 1250 South Boyero Court, and I, too, am an open space advocate, and I really appreciate that we have an open space advisory committee, and I hope that because you're an advisory committee that you do get to advise and that the trustees do listen to you, because you really do cipher and filter a lot more. They have their hands full with everything else. So thank you for being so approachable, and I would love to talk to you about what we can do as residents to survey the residents that the town trustees represent, because I haven't met one person except for a few planners that want that. So, but I'm here because I prepared for Zaharias. I a month ago was a part of the bird breeding study out at Hodgkin Harris Reservoir, and on that wonderful walk discovered the mink. I'm an outdoor educator, and that was my career. And when I saw that, it was like, holy mackerel, our open space ecosystem has just, I mean, the land from Zaharias and Hodgkin Harris has just expanded the food chain and everything around it. And it's like, that restoration project really worked. And so it's like, yeah, way to go, Superior. And then right after that, I found out that there was some development possibly planned. And obviously, that's progressed pretty rapidly. If there's an application pending, that it's like, what? Where are the values? Where are the values of the town? Where, you know? So anyhow, I got really excited and really appreciated that the night that I came here, that you looked at that and said, yeah, that's worth preserving, because it's a riparian zone. And Boulder County Open Space Acquisition has 5 things that they criteria for open space, and that land, Zaharias, meets 4 of them. It is next to open space because Hodgkin Harris is open space. It is impending development near a riparian zone. It is that. It has habitat. It has a thriving habitat. And it connects trails. And it would connect trails. So it's not agriculture. That was the 5th thing. So, but anyhow, it's a flourishing ecosystem, and I really hope that that the board does take your advice. And these are some things that I thought that they might want to listen to. Some reasons. It's a flourishing ecosystem that helps to support year-round migratory birds as well as animals along the HHR, which is Hodgkin Harris Reservoir, and it buffers the land. That land, the Zaharias is the buffer. It's the home. It's part of what they use as a daily stop for pelicans, geese, ducks, avocets, shorebirds, mammals. It gives by keeping it, it's a healthy prairie dog colony, and the prairie dogs are the keystone species of the prairie. And so there's like they create the food source for a lot of hawks, owls, coyotes, but they also create tunnels and homes for over 150 different species. Now, that's not a prime piece like some that have like hundreds and hundreds of acres. So maybe there's probably not 150 species that it houses, but it does a lot more than what we realize. The location is prime. When we come into Purple Park, it's gorgeous. You go, oh, this is so nice, when you come in. This is a natural location. This is a natural Purple Park. I mean, why couldn't we make it a natural park that we come into over that bridge and you see it and it's like, as opposed to, more people, more apartments, more buildings. So I agree with you guys. When I moved here 24 years ago, I was neighbors with them, and there was open space everywhere, so it wasn't really an issue. But now it's like, that's the last parcel, guys, on the east side. That's the last parcel. And yeah, it's expensive, but don't you splurge once in a while when you have to buy your wife a wedding ring? Or I mean, there are times when, when you see there's more value out there, there's times. And it doesn't mean that we can't partner with other groups to pay for it. Yeah, it is expensive, so the town doesn't have to pay all that. Let us go start figuring out how we can partner with groups to save it. And I know the timing is bad because it's under protocol. But the sign's still up there. So my question is, if the sign's still up there, why can't somebody go up and talk about buying it for open space? David Zaharias sat here on the 26th, and he stood up. He was 10 feet away from me, and he said, I'll sell it to open space at $6 million plus $1 million for my developer. And the developer said, I'll fold my 10. So I think we still have a window. He hasn't applied yet. Am I right? I don't know. So if given the go ahead by the trustees, I hope that we can start researching that. And I have a concept plan because I was an outdoor educator. I loved working with Habitat. So this is the Zaharias Open Space Concept Vision. It's not a plan, it's a vision. Okay? And so it has habitat. It has the reservoir. It has, I'm going to pass it around here, as a park. It connects trails. It has recreation, it has people on the trail, it has overlooks with interpretive signs, so it's educational. And so that's that. And then my daughter, who is a graphic recorder and an artist, did this for me for my birthday last week. And so this is it without all the markups, but it's a really nice one. And so that's a vision. And I hope that that vision comes true. And I know that the board has a lot of hard decisions ahead of them, but guess what? You're the advisory committee, and I hope they take that seriously. I hope you do. Please tell them. I mean, they're hearing all the pros and cons, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Cheryl Runnels Stafford. I live at 1382 Dillon Way. I'm a 25-year resident, and I was here last month, and I'm just going to echo everything that they said. I agree with all of it. I think the biggest thing that we really need to be concerned about is the safety issue. And the reason I'm going to say this is before the roundabout was on Rock Creek Parkway, right at the end of 88th, I had something happen at my home where I had to rush someone to the hospital. So we didn't have time to actually call and take them by an emergency vehicle. I actually had to get in my Camry and get them into the front seat and get to the hospital as quickly as possible. So I know that doesn't happen every day, and I know it doesn't happen every week. But the thing is that in reality, I saved that person's life. I got them to the hospital. Had I had traffic on 88th Street, never would have happened. If there was like a couple more lights, I was able to get them over there, get them into the emergency, and then they were stabilized and taken to Boulder Community at that time by ambulance. So I'm not saying that I'm the hero by any means, but I'm just saying that I can't even imagine if I had to get a couple of lights, that person wouldn't be around today. But I'm happy at that time none of this was going on. So that was quite a number of years ago. My kids were little, and my daughter is now 25 years old, so it had to have been at least 20 years ago. But that's my biggest thing. It's not just, I mean, I want open space. I love open space. I love everything that everyone has proposed and talked about, but I really think that we need to be more concerned about what's going to happen on 88th if there's more development in that area. That's just a very big concern of mine. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Brian Hill. I live on Keowita Lane. I've been a resident since 2001. A couple of comments on the Zaharias property. My understanding is the town and the county invested approximately $1.2 million to restore the Hodgson Harris Reservoir. I think that this development in the Zaharias property, if it occurs, would probably negate a lot of the value that went into that restoration. I think this development will also impact town resources like road maintenance, traffic enforcement, various town amenities as the inhabitants of this new development start using those resources. I don't know what that number is. I think that the town should look closely at what that would cost us. The town center development and the traffic on McCaslin is driving more and more people to use 88th Street to get over to Louisville. I think a development and the potential for a roundabout on 88th and any other type of traffic control would just, put a stranglehold on that transit back and forth. It would also put a stranglehold on transit of wildlife, because we know as the wildlife in the town center are looking for a new refuge. As far as money goes, I mean, I don't know if this property is for sale, if it has an option to purchase. I don't know what the status is. We just spent over $3 million to develop 12 acres at Wildflower Park. And I think it just boils down to a matter of values. What does this town value? What does the community value in terms of how much we want to spend to maintain this really pristine little island of nature? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I feel like a little old lady. I'm not even dressed right. I feel like Ma Kettle tonight. Susan Bowers, 1770 Morrison Court. My thoughts are not quite organized. I'm really blown away by the earlier discussion, and I get it. Of all the parcels that are a potential candidate for open space in the town of Superior, this is the only parcel that has prairie and riparian, and it has a thriving habitat. And we have recorded observations. We've seen the growth. I am in support of protecting this. I see the development that's taking place in the Newtown Center, and I moved here because Superior was a small little town. And it was the right size. It didn't have a church. I thought that was pretty cool. Not many towns can claim that. It was perfectly situated between Denver and Boulder. It had a great neighbor in Louisville, easy access to the mountains, and we weren't overly developed. That's changing, but I think we are still in control of what our town should be. That's one thing that this town's always done really well, is they listen to what we wanted. And I hope that the residents are surveyed regarding their preference. If this parcel should be developed, it will, I don't have the evidence, but I have to wonder what it will do to the migratory birds that have made a comeback over the last 2 years. As I said back in January, as a result of the restoration, we have more migratory birds and greater numbers than previously recorded. So there's been an impact. But what happens when you develop the other side? I don't have the science, and I'm not a scientist, but will we impact that? I know that today the wildlife is on the north shore of the reservoir, where there is no development. Where there is development on the south shore, you have Saddlebrook, you have Shamrock, you have people, you have dogs. There's very few, and I've been observing this reservoir for 16 years, there's very little habitation on the south shore. So I do firmly believe we will affect that, what happens on the north shore. So I'd like to consider that. And again, it's the only property I'm aware of in the town of Superior that has riparian and prairie. And in addition to the mink, earlier this year we did see 2 deer at the reservoir. I don't know where the moose that came over to the mall came from. That might have been Coal Creek. I didn't see it. But, there's 2 ways to get there, and so I figure either Coal Creek or that corridor. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Okay. Not seeing anybody. We will move on to our amended agenda item. in light of the discussion that we just heard with the town attorney, I think it would be appropriate to restrict our comments to the Hodgson Harris Reservoir. I think we can discuss the value that brings from an open space perspective to the town, and anything that we believe should be considered in preserving the ecosystem that has evolved and been restored since the dam restoration took place on the reservoir. I would ask that we stay away from discussing the Zaharias property specifically so that we don't tread into any waters we shouldn't, but I think we can go forward with this discussion. Let's see, I distributed some, let's see, Allison, can we actually pull up, do we have available the history of the Hodgson Harris Reservoir? While Allison's pulling it up, I'll just go ahead and start. The Hodgson Harris Reservoir in 2011 and before then underwent a large public engagement process where it had developed a leak. Boulder County had chosen to drain it. Oh, you printed it. Okay, thank you. I didn't see that they'd been printed. It had been drained. A large community effort took place to convince both Boulder County and the Superior Board of Trustees to rehab the dam that had broke and refill the reservoir. A working group of citizens, a working group of board members, of OSAC members, of Boulder County representatives was formed, and after evaluating 5 separate alternatives on what to do with the reservoir, it was chosen to go forward with a full reservoir restoration, which would cost $1.2 million. On September 26th of 2011, the town board at the time signed and approved a intergovernmental agreement with Boulder County to move forward with that restoration. Superior's share of that amount was $600,000. I forwarded so we've got the board packet, I believe, do we have the board packet available from that meeting that I sent over? I'll continue, but in the board packet was both the intergovernmental agreement as well as the joint property management agreement between Boulder County and the town of Superior. Just to note a few applicable clauses within those. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so to note a few applicable clauses in there. Did I go too far? Here we go. All right. The parties entered into the Hodgson Harris Joint Management Agreement, which referenced the common interests of the town and the county have with respect to being good stewards of the properties they own and of preserving the natural environment in the vicinity of the reservoir. Beyond that, coming down, the parties have a mutual interest in rehabilitation of the reservoir's dam, which interests include, in addition to maintaining the reservoir's decreed purpose of storage of irrigation water, providing wildlife habitat and an aesthetic amenity for residents of the town. those were 2 points that were important enough to the working group to include in the intergovernmental agreement. And then scrolling down a little bit further to this is the joint, the intergovernmental agreement between the town of Superior and Boulder County for joint property management. So this is the agreement between the two parties about open space that both the town and the Boulder County have a vested interest. So again, whereas the town and county have a shared desire to provide quality, passive recreational experiences to members of the public while simultaneously preserving the natural environment and being good stewards of the property they own and manage in the vicinity of the town of Superior. So I pull these out and I point these out specifically to help with the historical context of what our responsibilities as a town are for the Hodgson Harris Reservoir from a open space / wildlife perspective. During that time, when this was all taking place, the Open Space Advisory Committee of the time actually made some presentations to the board, and seeing if they've got it up here. I did not see it. They have 5. Here we go. Okay, that was not it. I'll read it out loud. But in the presentation that OSAC made to the board at the time, back in 2011, there were principal reasons for the town's interest in supporting the restoration of the dam. Number 1 was it's a gateway to the town of Superior, Louisville, and Boulder County. 2 is the wildlife and wetlands habitat. 3 is the potential trail connections. 4 is the residential view corridor and buffer. 5 is that it borders the future town center. And 6 was that it borders Zaharias, a high-value open space parcel. So from historical context, that's why the board chose to invest $600,000 of the town's money in the Hodgson Harris Reservoir. I think what we can do tonight and what would be valuable to the board, I would hope, is to understand that the Open Space Advisory Committee still values that parcel, and that we want to ensure that it maintains a value commensurate with what we put on it back then. So I think if we discuss any concerns that we have that or threats to the reservoir from development, I think that does not put us into a legal place that we shouldn't be going. My own personal opinions, I think that we need to make sure that the town board remembers all of this, and that it is front and center in their minds, and that they ensure that the reservoir ecosystem is disturbed as little as possible from any development that goes forward. I've personally been thinking about it quite a bit, and what our responsibilities can be. None of us are experts. None of us are wildlife ecologists or anything like that. But knowing that as development encroaches, it has a negative impact on ecology, on wildlife. I mean, is there any desire from the committee to try to get more information, to try to get an expert's view of how wildlife and the ecosystem could be negatively impacted by further development, or anything along those lines? I mean, kind of open up to the committee, share your all thoughts.
I'm just wondering, given the information we got from the attorney, where that would put us. If we did something like that.
Plus, it's not part of our work plan. Doesn't have to be part of our work plan.
No. It is part of our work plan.
It is. Okay.
And
do we have the budget for that too?
Well, you would have to make the recommendation towards that.
Exactly.
Just like all the committees, but it's the board's money, essentially.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, as long as you're talking specific to the open space itself as open space, and you're not referencing anything been conceptually talked about.
Yep. And just to highlight, the fourth bullet in our ongoing section of our work plan is monitor the Hodgson Harris Reservoir habitation. So I think this falls perfectly in line with our work plan.
So I don't know if we would want to say anything specific about development. I think if we would want to make a recommendation, it would be more that, this has, I'm trying to remember, Ken, it was June of 2015 that it opened with Boulder County? Is that when we cut the ribbon?
It was somewhere along that time range.
It was 2015, right? It was 2015. So I think the recommendation that I would support, so we wouldn't get into any places we weren't supposed to go, is now it's been open for 2 years for wildlife, and that we would potentially ask the board to maybe ask Ashley or one of the other companies that they have used in the past to do an official. I know that with the Audubon Society and some neighbors in town that they have done one, and they've done a great one, but it wasn't a one that the town funded or asked for, and that's, and just see, really what is there, from that perspective to sort of supplement what we've gotten from the residents. So just sort of an accounting of what really is on that property that we own, that part, the Hodgkins Harris.
That makes sense. One of the things that I continued to look at as I looked at a map of the area is I don't know how to move. So one of my concerns was the what was known as the buffer tract H going through right on the edge of the town center. And if you look at a map right now, there is a wildlife corridor that goes from all of the Boulder County open space to the west of McCaslin. They have that corridor through tract H all the way through the currently open Anderson property. And even though there's 88 that splits them, it then goes to the Zaharias property into Hodgson Harris. So there's a wildlife corridor that currently exists that allows for all this wildlife activity into the town. I am concerned about how I don't know if we can I'm not sure how to express my concern without going where the attorney told us not to go at this point. Well, is there an appetite from the group to make a recommendation right now to try to get more information about the Zaharias wildlife? Would the group rather wait until we can talk about everything as a whole once a application has been submitted? Everything I had planned out was kind of thrown for a loop when we first got here, so I'm kind of at a loss at this moment.
I always like to be proactive rather than reactive, personally. Given what was said tonight, I feel like we have to be reactive more than proactive in some ways. But yes, if we are allowed to proceed with getting an ecologist's viewpoint of the potential impact on the wildlife in that area, I would definitely like to proceed with that.
Should we get an opinion from the town attorney, before we do that? Or is that being reactive?
You could get a wildlife survey. You couldn't get one on, it's not our property, but from what I heard from what Trish said, we were talking about
Hodgson Harris.
the co-owned piece. So all we would need to do is work with Boulder County to get access to it. So, and we do wildlife assessments all the time. We're in a continuous ongoing one over here. With Parks One and Two, as well as the trail extension that we built just recently. So as long as you're talking about the property that we own and have access to, that's not a problem at all.
Okay.
Patrick, what exactly does a wildlife assessment entail?
They'll come out and it would be kind of up to us
Was there an assessment? Was there an assessment done before the rehabilitation of that reservoir?
You know, I'd have to go back and look, and you know, this is kind of just staff's remembering of it is at that time it was so much more about just shoring up the water source for Boulder County to have it, and then there were these awesome additional benefits that come along with it. What I remember is it was pretty degraded over there, that absolutely putting water back into it.
Yeah. I watched many of the videos that took place in 2011 as background for this meeting, and based off several of the community comments, the wildlife had virtually disappeared when it went dry.
Because I think that would be really neat to see the results of that assessment, to see what the town and Boulder County was able to do, and then the impact of it in that area.
Patrick, in a wildlife assessment, is there ever a formal report that can be put out as maybe a conservation plan or something that provides a roadmap for a sustainable path forward for the local ecology of that area, or is that something we could expect?
So, for instance, what we're doing along Parks 1 and 2, Cold Creek, is we're required to enhance the material over there to protect the existing, basically the riparian corridor, and then take steps further to make it better. So, yeah, I mean, if you ask those guys to provide those recommendations, they'll provide them. In terms of, grass planting, BMPs on.
Okay. Others' views on the topic? Is this something we're interested in making a recommendation on, so we can get a baseline of what's out there right now? And
I would say as a general principle, I always like to have more information, especially if the bigger the purchase I'm making, the more research I do on it, the more I want to know about it. I think this goes right in that line of thinking, in that as we're evaluating open space around town, regardless of where it is, I would want to know as much about that property as possible, what the ecology of it was, what the benefits were, what the impacts were. So I'm in favor. I think it's a great idea to at least have all the information we can about this area.
So back in 2005, I was just talking to Ryan about this. I believe Smith Environmental did that survey when the reservoir was still there.
Yes, it was.
And noted in both that study as well as in our 2005 plan how robust the wildlife was in that area. So again, for comparison purposes, it would be good to have that in comparison to 2005. And then potential impact of what's, with the traffic and the impending, all the growth and development that's happened in that area since then.
Okay. So it sounds like we should be making a recommendation tonight. So we're recommending that the board obtain a wildlife assessment of the Hodgson Harris Reservoir area.
I think we are recommending that the board, in conjunction with Boulder County.
Yeah, in Boulder County.
So that it's both of them for the Hodgkin Res HHR, what both pieces are owned, exclusive of anything else.
Yeah. Brief question or comment?
Yes, but do you have to reopen public comment?
I don't think we need to be that formal.
Do we?
I would.
Okay.
I would open public comment, that way it's noted as public comment.
Okay. Before we do that, is everybody on the board interested in hearing public comment on this topic? Or not the
Yes.
board, the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and reopen public comment. So if you want to come up and
woman, Susan Bauer, 1770, Morrison Court. Since I was last here, I broke my pelvis a few weeks ago. So that's the drama. I'd like to comment based on your comments. Paula Hansley, who's a very well-known local ornithologist, was monitoring the aquatic wildlife from 2007 to 2011, and her findings were instrumental in the 2011 recommendation. We had a baseline, and Boulder County, she was recording that in the Boulder County wildlife monitoring database. There's a database out there. So, and since December of 2015, Dick Marin and myself have joined that wildlife, or the aquatic waterfowl monitoring program, and we've been monitoring every Sunday morning since then, which then led to me coming down and letting you folks know in April or May that we were conducting that I reached out to Boulder County Audubon to, in addition to what was happening with what we were recording for Boulder County, reaching out to Boulder County Audubon saying, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I think it's pretty good. And so we started that bird breeding study, and it's wrapping up right now, and we are going to be putting together a report. But actually, some of the birders, the participants, have been so enthused by what they've seen that they have decided to continue doing their daily and weekly observations. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make you aware that there is a database out there, and that there is historical data that's already been gathered previously that was used for the landmark decision in 2011, and then also what's been happening since then. So I realize I'm not a scientist, and that's a different thing, but observing it on a daily basis, has had its benefits. So I just wanted to make you aware.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we should.
Well, is there any other public comment? No. Okay. Then I'm going to close public comment.
So then I was going to say in our recommendation that we should recommend that, if appropriate, to be that they contact local resources that have been assessing the wildlife there. Is that appropriately vague?
Okay, so what I have here so far, OSAC recommends that the board work with Boulder County, and I changed that rather than and Boulder County because I don't think we can make recommendations to Boulder County.
Okay.
So OSAC recommends that the board work with Boulder County to obtain a wildlife assessment of the Hodgson Harris Reservoir area. This wildlife assessment should include a conservation plan with recommendations for the continued and sustainable rehabilitation of the ecosystem. So we want to add something that this
sort of, or if the board deems it appropriate to contact local resources that have been tracking wildlife.
So if appropriate, this assessment should also utilize this assessment should also utilize open source historical data that documented wildlife activity in the area. Does that capture it?
I think so, for comparison.
For comparison purposes.
Yeah, for comparison. Because we're looking for the delta.
Yep. Okay.
I don't know, but is wildlife too specific of a word?
Why would it be?
Does wildlife encompass every creature, or is that
data that it documented?
I don't know.
We could say ecological activity. So if appropriate, this assessment should also utilize open source historical data that documented ecological activity in the area for comparison purposes. Does that capture what we're looking for?
Yes.
Is there anything else we want to add to it?
You said wildlife at the beginning too. You might want to change that.
Ah. Okay. Oh,
So Ken,
there
one
it is
thought,
again.
should we reference our work plan in that at all? I mean, does that give it more weight that this is actually something from our work plan? I'm not suggesting, I'm just trying to bring it up, and maybe even to reference some of this, the 2011, we wanted to remind the board of what was in there. It may be an opportunity, I mean, it's getting long, but yeah, I don't know.
I think that's probably a good idea, though.
I can reflect that in the notes that you went through the historical information.
Okay. If we have it.
We've also seen two similar recommendations if you just put consistent with the 2017 board
Okay.
plan.
Okay.
I think it's just a clean way to capture.
Okay.
Kind of ties it back very subtly and right
Okay.
in front.
Thank you.
Okay. So reading it from the top. OSAC recommends that the board work with Boulder County to obtain an ecological assessment of the Hodgson-Harris Reservoir area. This ecological assessment should include a conservation plan with recommendations for the continued and sustainable rehabilitation of the ecosystem. If appropriate, this assessment should also utilize open source historical data that documented ecological activity in the area for comparison purposes. This recommendation is consistent with the 2017 board-approved work plan. The 2017 board-approved OSAC work plan. Okay. Anything else you want to throw in there?
Potential impact? Is that something that they can postulate, extrapolate on due to proximity to the reservoir?
So as far
as density, usage, something, what the potential impact could be based on.
I was thinking that as well, but doesn't that start to get into that?
Yeah.
I feel like that falls into where we shouldn't go.
Yeah.
Okay.
From what I heard, I wouldn't be comfortable adding it.
we could put something to include significant potential risks that would threaten this ecosystem. I feel like that's broad enough and helps us be good stewards of. I mean, if we can have them identify potential risks in that broad manner.
Or maybe they could even identify, like they were saying, that there's more activity on the North Shore, just something so they can protect some buffers if there's existing wildlife there.
Conservation plan with recommendations for the continued. Okay, let's see. Risks.
Would those things be part of what would be considered a general assessment?
That's true, or the conservation plan.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's somewhat implied. I'm just concerned we're getting close.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
what we were just
told not to
discussed.
do, yeah.
Because there's a lot being said without it being said in all of this.
All right, let me read this back to you and we can decide whether or not we're getting too close to the line. OSAC recommends that the board work. I'll skip that first sentence. This ecological assessment should include a conservation plan with recommendations for the continued sustainable rehabilitation of the ecosystem, should identify significant risks to the sustainability of the ecosystem, and should identify areas of the property with significant wildlife activity. So that's still giving us everything we're looking for. What could potentially harm this reservoir and its ecosystem? Where on this property are we seeing the significant wildlife activity? So it gives us all the information that we need to ensure that we're making the right decisions going forward for proper conservation. We're not making any statements towards development. I don't think we're going beyond over that line on this. Is there anything else we want to make sure we have information-wise down the road that will help us make good decisions and recommendations to the board?
So if we make a recommendation to the board to do an assessment and the board accepts this recommendation, are we able to have discussion with the people who do the assessment to talk about what we'd want to see in it? Or is then the conversation's over and they just go about doing it?
So I think Patrick can elaborate further if needed, but generally what would happen is we'd send the recommendation up to the board would say yay or nay, and then direct staff to move forward with getting this assessment done. And staff would use our recommendation and any further guidance from the board to direct that wildlife assessment.
From the scope, and then that reporting would come back initially to staff, we'd go back to the board and say, which format do you want that reported back out? Whether it, something joined with the board and OSAC or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But there's normally, with the environmental assessments, at least in my experience, is you bring somebody in completely neutral. No previous, no past. They're going to look at it 100% as unbiased, and that's very consistent with what the board has wanted to see in the past. So they may or may not refer to local resources. Most of the people that we've worked with are the best of the best. They always come in clean slate. And we just put in a thorough job.
So we might not even need to say indicate where there's wildlife around the reservoir, because that's probably already included in their assessment.
Yeah. I mean, if you want them to look at an area specific, though, that's okay.
Yeah,
They'll find it anyway.
I think it'd be appropriate to have it in the scope of this recommendation, so that they might see it, but they might not point it out in a report. So if we say we want to know, that way they actually do pull it out, and we can say, oh, great, they're all on the South Shore, or they're all on the North Shore, or they're all in the middle of the lake, whatever it is.
I agree, because then say it stays open space, that gives you a place where you may want to put a viewing station in that proximity, or if it's developed, then that tells you where you may want to push back where the development is placed. It seems more appropriate to get it all in one than wonder those things later.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we have everything in my prior notes to this meeting. I think we've kind of included everything that we can include from my perspective. Is there anything else that anybody can think of? So I'll read it back one more time for everybody. OSAC recommends that the board we'll say the town board, make it more official. OSAC recommends that the town board work with Boulder County to obtain an ecological assessment of the Hodgson-Harris Reservoir area. This ecological assessment should include a conservation plan with recommendations for the continued and sustainable rehabilitation of the ecosystem, should identify significant risks to the sustainability of the ecosystem, and should identify areas of the property with significant wildlife activity. If appropriate, this assessment should also utilize open source historical data that documented each ecological activity in the area for comparison purposes. This recommendation is consistent with the 2017 board-approved OSAC work plan. Does that sound good to everybody? Any adjustments? So do we have any motion to recommend this recommendation to the board as read? I recommend that we make this recommendation to the board as previously read. Is there a second?
Just before you go to that, I
Okay.
have a question. If the board doesn't want to accept the recommendation, how would they handle that? Would they just not take it?
So that's actually I was going to give a heads up at the update section. I don't know if anybody watched the recent retreat that the board had this past Friday. The board made a decision that rather than committees coming and reading recommendations during public comment, which is what I've been doing, they'd rather
all the committees have been doing, not
yeah,
just you.
exactly. They want to make sure that they can have a chance to actually converse back and forth, ask questions, and get more in-depth information rather than just hearing it read out to them. So that will no longer be the practice. What instead will take place is there's going to be a spot in the agendas at a committee's desire to be added, where the committees can read the recommendations, provide some background and historical information, context to the board, and the board can then have a little bit of back and forth. So I believe, to answer your question, going forward, that's how it would take place. So if they want to say no, we'd probably hear it during a board meeting, and we could have that conversation with them. If this hasn't happened yet, so I'm imagining that's how it would take place, but that's
So just
to be seen.
Hearing what we heard earlier, where she said, something is implied. Do we think anything in our recommendation implies a burden on the board that if they accept it, they have opened a judicial avenue that they didn't want to open?
I don't think so.
So I'm just asking everyone that's allowed to talk. So across through to our liaison, across to here.
So I'll just put it this way. With respect to what Ken just said, I think that's accurate in terms of reporting, and we're looking at it as a process improvement. I think it's a really good one, rather than having it in public comment, to have a formal agenda item where all the committees who actually have a recommendation or something to bring to the board's attention, to flag it, and then we can ask questions. I think to the extent that we're going to actually, and I don't want to speak for the whole board, and we'll have to see how this plays out, but when something kind of elevates to the level where the board's going to actually take action, I don't think that we would ever take action right then and there. That would be kind of the starting point for a more formal discussion, at which point then it would be actually an agenda item for the board, where we would then have an ability to invite the public to comment on something, because at that point in time it's just going to be an informal agenda item as a report from a committee. So then if we want to actually take action, I think we would need to have that as a separate agenda item so the public's on notice, so the public can come up and comment on it as well. And then we can have a more kind of robust discussion. I think that process should, from a legal perspective, and I'm not the town's attorney. I happen to be an attorney in my day job, but I'm not providing legal advice to the town. But I would imagine that going through this process, the town attorney will be able to see what's going on, and if there's anything that concerns the town attorney could then advise the board before it gets to be a problem. But in no event do I think the board is forced to making any decision, irrespective of what the recommendation is from OSAC or any other committee. So I think you should continue to do your jobs and make the recommendations that you think you need to make. Thanks.
Thank you. So my point of view is we haven't crossed that line. We're not talking about other properties. We're talking about risks to the ecosystem. I think this is well within our purview as stewards of the superior open space.
I agree.
So do I?
You going to remove or move again?
Yeah. So I'll
Sorry.
The recommendation has not changed since I last read it. So I move to make a recommendation to the board to make the recommendation as read prior to the board. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion before we vote? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay. Perfect. And Allison, I can send you these exact words after the meeting ends. Okay, excellent. Moving on to our next agenda item, discussion recommendation for the budget. We started on this last month and decided to postpone the rest of the discussion until this meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate it. Anyway, where we had left off is we wanted to get an idea of how much money we had spent so far this year, what the forecast was for how much we were going to spend for the remainder of the year. That we can make a more informed decision. So, Allison, do you have those numbers for us?
I sure do.
Awesome.
Right now, the committee's budget line has $4,195 left.
Can you say how much? I'm sorry.
$4,195. But there are some expenses that need to come out of that line, including our tent for National Trails Day, remaining partial contract payment for the wildlife ecologist, and for our snake conservation has not sent me an invoice yet. So we, after that would come out, we would have approximately $2,500 left, which I know that the group is considering COSA. And the year that Ken went, it was approximately $700-ish. So I would say maybe $700 to $1,000 per person to keep that into consideration. And just so the group knows, there were some cost increases that we talked about before the committee recommended spending the funding on certain aspects of National Trails Day, including Hot Quest increase in the tent, the new tent that we had for shade, and then for Jeff and Paige for their increase for their cost. And one of the things the group had talked about also in the beginning of the year or last year during our budget conversation was when we determined that we were going to do the night hikes again this year, we were going to do some type of swag for the kiddos, like the red flashlights. So I kind of took a peek at that today, another look at ordering them, and they're pretty pricey. So probably around $10 a piece if we have like 50 children. No. So just keep that in your mind. Plus we'd have to buy batteries for them. And so,
Yeah.
So I don't know if the group wanted to amend that. Another thing that we did last year was the face painting at Chili Fest, which the group hasn't talked about this year. So with the amount that's left, the $2,500, just thinking about how the group wants that allotted.
So let's just drop that down to $1,500 and just say that we'll spend roughly $1,000 for someone to go to COSA.
When is our fiscal year end?
It's on the calendar year, I believe, right? Yeah.
Okay. Can I interrupt? Was there some talk about Allison going or someone from the town staff going? And I just want to make sure that.
Is that covered? Are we covering that?
Are we paying for that, or is the town paying for that?
I would not be able to go this year.
Okay. Was there talk about anyone else going? From the town
Patrick told us last month that he was thinking of sending you, and if not, maybe somebody else.
News to you.
Well, I would love to go, but I've already committed to a training for a week in August. So, it's hard to leave for large amounts of time.
Yeah.
Right. Regardless, would the town pay for that, or would that come out of our funding?
I think in the past it's come out of a budget in our department, and then there's also a question of those funds being available.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So that brings us back to about $1,500 left for this year. The face painting at Chili Fest. I think the kids loved it. It was difficult because of how tight things were. We didn't have a lot of space, and that became a real challenge. My personal view is if we had a tent to ourselves, this would be a no-brainer, and we should absolutely do it.
Well, last year we didn't have the swag, though, so this year we have the swag,
Yeah,
as do other committees, so you're right, like, we're in the tent with any other committee that staffs it, so.
Yep.
I believe that there's still leftover sunglasses from PROSAC, there's still bags from RCAC, there's, we still have
The poop bags.
the poop bags, so I don't know that we would want to pay for,
Agreed.
though I do agree that the kids liked it, but,
And the idea was we used it as a draw to get people in to actually have a conversation with them. So we're still going to have the swag already as that draw. And I think for Chili Fest, even more important than those dog bags, we still have
all the posters.
Well, and 3.5 cases of water.
Yeah.
So we have ice cold water at Chili Fest sitting there for free. I think we're going to have plenty of people coming up and talking to us. So I think we can pass on the
4th of
face
July, though,
painting this
those
year.
posters were a draw in themselves, I
Yeah.
felt, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Okay. As far as the additional swag for the night hike, that's way more expensive than we typically pay. My instinct is to say no. That's getting beyond what's reasonable.
$10 seems pretty high to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I would say anything for the night hike, it would be that something be purchased for Ashley to have the appropriate equipment versus swag.
And when I renew her contract, I figure in an amount for those types of items. So that's, I mean, unless the group created a new type of program and she needed additional, we've already figured that into the contract for the year.
Good, thanks.
Okay. So that basically means we're going to have a surplus of about $1,500 for this year. Considering that we might have additional improvements to National Trail Day next year and inflation, I mean, we saw costs go up on other areas this year. In my opinion, it makes sense to keep our budget flat, and that $1,500 would account for any increases we would see. Just for historical knowledge,
We up to $1,250.
what we did last year was we increased the total to $14,500, and that included $2,500 in committee/staff education, which was the COSA conference, and $12,000 for open space coordination. So I propose that we just mirror this recommendation. Oh, sorry.
I thought we
I-
were up at 12,500. I thought that's what we ended it.
No, I thought they passed what we requested, but I guess I might be wrong on that.
You know what, I could definitely give an update on that and send it out to the group just to make sure. I just don't have my budget book with me.
Okay. Well, I know we had recommended 14,500, and I thought I had seen that we got funded at what we had recommended, but
I thought it was 12, but.
well, before that,
Yeah, it's 12 because.
in prior years, the annual budget had been okay. So they did keep us at 12.5. That's what we had been in prior years.
12,000. It was 10,000.
And we put
It was 10.
Prior years.
It was 10,000 for open space coordination and 2,500 in committee and staff education.
Oh, the separate line.
Yes. So sorry, I was combining our two lines.
No, yeah, sorry about that. No.
So you're saying that
There's a training line.
Right.
I was looking specifically at the coordination line.
and that was 1,200
That was 12,000.
or 1,000. Don't know why I keep saying 100. Yeah. So that is what we had recommended. So we did 12,000 for the open space coordination, and we did, and that was an increase of 2,000 from the prior year, and then we had stayed flat at 2,500 for committee and staff education.
So the amount that I was referring to was from the 12,000. The training line is completely intact. So that's different.
Okay, so we're.
What I was talking about was for the.
So then we're
events,
left at
For
2,500.
the wildlife ecologist and, like the programming that we're done.
Gotcha.
And that is the main line.
Yep.
The training line
It hasn't been touched. Okay.
Sorry about that.
So we're at $2,500 surplus then.
Plus.
Right. So do we want to recommend going backwards? I mean, again, I don't know inflation costs. Staying flat I think would be still reasonable. If we end the year with a surplus of money, that's not the end of the world. If the board sees fit to drop us back down, then I don't think that's the end of the world. But I think staying flat keeps us safe to ensure that we can still put on a really good National Trails Day event and add any additional educational events that are necessary. I mean, like last year we added the snake guy. Oh, and equestrian. Yeah, we've had that in the past. So a recommendation to stay flat then is what we're thinking.
I agree with that. I think that it gives us the flexibility to add things that are unforeseen at this point.
Excellent. Okay, so basically just stealing the language that we used for last year's recommendation. OSAC recommends that the budget remain at a total of $14,500 in 2018, which includes $2,500 in committee/staff education and $12,000 in open space coordination. Allison, is it more useful if we, right now we're just saying that the budget remain, should we say the OSAC related budget remain? Does that matter?
I think if you just exactly reiterate the recommendation from last year, I don't think you need to put any more thought into comparing it.
So that's it. So OSAC recommends that the budget remain at a total of $14,500 in 2018, which includes $2,500 in committee/staff education and $12,000 in open space coordination. I move that we make the recommendation as read. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Allison, I can send that exact language to you as well. Okay. Next, discussion of the 5-year trail plan. I have everybody's rankings. We discussed the map last month and anything we wanted to drop, so I think we can keep it brief this month and just simply take a quick look at the take a quick look at how things panned out. So what I have here is the combined OSAC and ProStack rankings. So here in this green column is the combined rankings. I've got a ranking column here and a scoring column. Again, the scores were based off high, medium, or low. 3 was high, 2 was medium, 1 was low. That's how we got to these. Then over here, I've got how the ranking was for just ProStack, how the ranking was for just OSAC, and then what our scoring was for each of them. So as you can see from what we were going with, it was fairly pretty much exactly what we had ranked. There was small deviation for our number 5, which dropped. There it goes. So our number 5 was installing a soft trail between Autry Park and the Hodgson Harris Reservoir. ProStack didn't rank that very high, which is why it dropped so far, but that was kind of the big difference on our plan. I did share Peter Bottomley, the ProStack chair, had shared ProStack's rankings with us, which is how I got this. I shared with him, once we were all finished, what ours looked like, and asked if he had any issues with it or anything that he would like to be discussed. He had made a request that in our coordinated ranking that we consider flip-flopping number 5 and number 6. So that was trail number 14 and trail number 16. He'd rather have 16 above 14. The reason for that was that between the two committees, there were more hits on people who said they wanted it to be a target for 2017, 2018. And as you can see, they had the same combined scoring, so this was just Excel spit it out in that order.
Isn't 16 done? It's built.
I wrote it.
Yeah, it's done now. So ProStack got to this way before we did. They, I think, did their rankings 2 months ago.
So
they did theirs in April. Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, does it?
We can say yes, but it doesn't matter.
I mean, if it helps for any other reason, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So there was that one, and then he had another request. He wanted trail number 10 to be moved up to rank number 7. Trail number 18 to be, number 8 should be trail number 1, and then number 9 should remain as trail 18. The reason for that was that trail 10 was ranked as a high priority by ProStack, and both committees ranked it as a target for 2017, 2018. Again, I don't personally have that big of a preference. The amount that we actually use this list is fairly negligible, and anything that we do use it for will come back to us for a recommendation anyway. So everything's close enough that I don't have any problems making those adjustments.
At this point.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, they're all 34s. So
exactly.
It's the same thing of, yeah.
So no objections to making those requested changes. Beautiful. All right. So I don't think we need a formal recommendation for this, do we, Allison? Have we made a formal recommendation? I don't think we made a formal recommendation in the past for this. We'll just say this is OSAC's.
Well, I can reflect in the notes that OSAC agrees to make proposed changes to OSAC's original plan, and go forward with the.
Where rankings are tied, I guess.
Yeah,
Is that,
where rankings are tied.
Where rankings are tied.
Yep, that works. Okay, cool. Any other?
Ken, do we get a copy of this?
Yeah, I can send this out to the entire committee.
Okay. And then, Allison, there was the trail map updated based on this that we had. Can we get a copy of that also?
And just so everybody.
Or do we have it? Okay. Can we just get an email on that, please?
Is this it? Nope, sorry. Apologies.
No, it's the 4th of July, I think.
Oh, again.
It was just it was all the recommendations we made last time of what was removed, and I just thought it looked really good. A third of them are off the list. It's a lot simpler.
Looks so naked now. And by the way, we showed this to Peter Bottomley on ProStack, and he agreed that it made sense to remove the trails that were removed. So we are still in chorus with ProStack on this.
Yep. And I just wanted so I can update the continuity document with all these changes. Move those to not under consideration for all the reasons we discussed.
Perfect.
Okay. So now that we're all synced up and this is going to be presented, is there any chance of getting any new trails going? I mean,
So,
this year / next year?
I mean, there's still a recommendation, there's the designs out there for the trails we'd recommended.
Right.
Patrick
And
talked
so-
about last month how they're all very challenging and now expensive. I don't know that there's going to be any opportunity for new trails. My understanding is no, but...
So we went through this exercise just to go through the exercise.
Well, I think it was still valuable because we had no idea whether they were feasible. We had no idea how much they cost. I mean, we got a lot of good information out of it.
No, I mean, what we've just done.
Oh, yeah.
There's really.
So there's going to be a leadership meeting between OSAC and ProStack now that this is done. And I've had the same thought. Why do we update this every single year? I don't know if there's a requirement from the town that we do it, but I'm going to talk to Peter on his preference.
Right.
We do this every year, and it's been valuable for 1 year. And even then, we reevaluated to
It's
see
a
what
lot
we
of
really
time
thought.
and very little reward.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, the one thing that did come out is how many we removed from the list.
Well, that's when
So
that
that
is
was
true. That's when
valuable.
we should be reviewing it. Is
Yeah.
when things actually come off the list.
Yeah.
Have things changed.
So I'll add it to the list of things to talk about with Peter about whether we should continue doing an update to this 5-year trails plan
Thank you.
every year rather than every 5 years.
Right. Or every other year. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions about the trail plan? Perfect. Moving on. Discussion topic. So the Parks and Recreation staff did a tour for a handful of the trustees a week or so ago. I got comments from trustees Pennington and Dozell that it was incredibly insightful and valuable, and they both reached out to recommend that OSAC consider getting the same tour. Allison, can you give kind of an idea of what was on that tour and whether it's a possibility for us to take that, and then we can talk about whether it's something we're interested in doing?
Sure. The tour was given to the board members, and it basically went over the different things that the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department maintains and manages in town. And, went to different areas in town, different parks, and just kind of gave a broad overview, like how much irrigation and, how many contracts and partnerships we oversee, the programming that we do. So, it was a pretty broad overview of our department. So, and how our department strives to meet town board goals, which is typical of a department in a municipality.
Oh.
I don't know. I think more data is always good, so I'm in favor of it.
Yeah.
It seems very similar to what Sean and I did with Boulder County.
Yeah.
So I found that very useful. I would think, from the town's perspective, they would want to combine as many committee members as possible so they don't have to, this takes a lot of time from staff. And,
Yeah.
And we've heard that before of, the same requests from multiple committees, so.
Yeah, that was my concern as well.
I'll just say I had a scheduling conflict that day, so to the extent that there's another tour, I'd love to go.
But I find it very valuable and know what sort of is going on with it.
Yep.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Okay. So, Allison, do you think it would be possible for you and Patrick to talk to see if you guys have the resources to do another one of these tours for us? And not only us, but I could reach out to Peter to make sure that he's aware of this. So,
I would say
ProStack.
Peter, CAPS, Historical, any committee.
Any
that wants.
committee we can,
Just quick
or
question.
unless that becomes more complicated for you guys.
What are we looking to get out of this? Before we waste staff's time, what are we as a OSAC committee looking to get out of this? I can understand the board doing that, but I'm not exactly sure I understand what we would get out of this.
What I was told specifically was valuable to us is that it gave a much more broader context understanding of the open space in the town, that they went out and walked it, that they heard specific details and information at each spot that they went to that wasn't necessarily there before, and it helped build a more holistic view of what the town's offerings are.
Well, and they didn't walk per se.
Right.
We had, several, vehicles that would go along a mapped route and different topics at each place. And a lot of it was specifically to non-passive uses of parks. So I don't know. I guess it would just be up to the group.
I mean, we can ask that it be more geared towards open space rather than a lot of the manicured stuff if need be. I still think I think walking through everything that the Parks Department does is valuable, just so we have a better understanding of what they're responsible for and how we fit into the context of their workload. But I want to be fully respectful of staff time and not waste it. Or
I could definitely, I think just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, this would be valuable for anybody in the public, not just our committee, to be honest. I mean, like they did with us, and they opened it up to the public. So there might be other people than just committees that would want to be on this and would get something out, because there's a lot of stuff in town that a lot of people don't know about, a ton of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As a group, I'm not sure how much we would get out of that. We've been looking at parcels and everything, and I have anyway, for a very long time, and I personally don't want to waste staff's time. But if they're going to put something together for everybody, I'd be glad to attend, but only if there's value add to it.
In my opinion, there's value added for our group, but
Okay, well, I'm just speaking for myself.
No, I agree. I'm speaking for myself too.
It does sound like it would be a smaller group. I mean, if you're in vehicles and, are they just, you stop and discuss? I mean, could 50 people go on this, or would it need to be a smaller group?
It was 6 people, I think.
I think only a few trustees attended, and that was a little more simple. But if we open it up to all committees and the public, it could definitely be more complicated.
Well, and I don't think we need to do that. I think the opening up to other committees was to make sure that, my thought was pro-stack, because that seems fairly within their wheelhouse too. But if that gets things more complicated than necessary, then we don't need to go down that route.
I would definitely check with Patrick and see, what the thoughts are, or the capacity is, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of people coming from the public, to be honest. They advertised the Boulder open space stuff at the very last second to the public, and no one showed up from the public. And that's for all of Boulder County.
Okay.
So for Superior, I don't see that being an issue either. But for transparency purposes, that's why I'm saying that.
Yeah.
I don't want us to feel like we're excluding.
Of course.
That's why I'm
the
also
town.
mentioning the other committees.
The other committees,
To be transparent that, certainly CAPS might have interest.
I think CAPS gets the closest. Open space and then Parks and Rec clearly, I think, fits within the Parks and Rec department kind of umbrella. CAPS I can see because they're beautifying and whatnot, doing public art and work, so that does make sense. But yeah,
Parks and Rec does liaise to 6 committees.
Okay, never mind.
I'm just,
Well, in that case, how about we just say, Allison, how about you and Patrick talk and decide what might make the best?
Yes, that's what we'll.
Perfect. Okay. So on to updates and look-aheads. The first one is 4th of July event debrief. So anybody who was there, if you just want to talk about how things went, what you guys heard, and your thoughts.
So I was there for the second shift, and I thought that it was great. There was a lot of people who came, and perhaps it's because all 3 committees that were there had swag, but I think a lot of people were drawn in, and it seemed like people were interested in the maps that we had.
I agree. I think it was the most I'd ever talked at any event. There was a lot of chattiness, which was great, and a lot of comments about various things. Some input on requests of a community garden. Some citizens talking about how much they appreciate and love the wildlife at Hodgkin Harris, and their desire to keep that open space. And then other complaints about planes above Superior, which is not regarding open space. But you brought it up, so. And everything I thought went very smoothly.
I was there for the morning shift. I felt like there were a lot of people. I wasn't at Trails Day, so I don't have that as a comparison, but we were constantly speaking with people. People were coming up. We gave out a lot of the dog bags. I fielded probably at least 10 questions around trail connections. How do I get from here to there? That was a common topic.
Joel did a great job of telling people how to navigate through town to where they wanted to go.
So we answered a lot of those questions. I fielded one or two kind of off the wall about, how can we mow the open space that's on the west side of McCaslin so rattlesnakes don't get me. That, I directed the gentleman to Boulder County because it's not ours. Things like that. Some things that we couldn't answer, but for the most part, I felt like everybody was invested. Genuinely coming up, want to know questions, concerns, about Superior open space, and I was impressed with the turnout. That's kind of my takeaway.
Excellent.
Yeah, I second or third all that. The giveaways were a hit. I mean, we were constantly restocking those because they were going away pretty quick. I have the leftovers, by the way. So we have one box.
One box
I have
left.
one box at my house.
2 boxes left.
Yeah.
So we've
So
got
and I have
two.
the maps too. So just in case you need them, I have them.
And
So
who has the banner?
the banner? I did not take.
So did the banner go back to?
We probably have the banner.
Okay, because I was storing it. If I need to store it, Allison, just let me know.
If there are passports left?
There were no
We
passports.
burned through a lot. Yeah, when I showed up for the second shift, we were out. So yeah,
No,
those are.
I was going to say I did the shift with Joel, and we ran out of passports right at the end of ours. So I don't know I don't know if that's where we used some of our extra leftover money, but there were people looking for them
During our shift, there were
during
people
all the other shifts. So
we were just directing
I'll
them
check
down
it.
here to get them. I hope that was the right answer. But
Yeah, there should be still, we held back some to have them here.
okay.
So
But typically they fly off the shelves.
yeah, so just something we want to think about for, I guess I would just put out there, is that something we want to supplement into Chili Fest as the next sort of big event if there's not enough? I don't know. I'm just.
Well, the thing is typically Chili Fest, I think, is the last event
yeah.
that gets stamped, and the program is basically finished, completed. Unless they still go to the parks to do the, scrambling.
I don't even
word
think
scramble
people,
signs.
I'm not even sure people were taking them for the passport reason. They're taking them for the map reason. So that would be my only other comment on it, that they really weren't looking necessarily even to be stamped. A number of people were. Some were like, oh, this map is great, and the way it folds down is nice. It's easy to keep with you on a hike or a ride or something. So.
Well, one thing is that it gets updated every year.
Yep.
So if we had a surplus at the end of the year,
So I guess maybe not for this year, but maybe
little
we
more
should
next
think
year.
about the numbers for next year.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure Katie.
Yeah, just to give that feedback that people were looking for them and we had none left. So I don't know how many you held back for Chili Fest. So,
We just held it back for town hall.
yeah,
Yep.
or held
Right.
back for whatever reason that they weren't there. So the same things that everybody else was commenting on. A lot of people came through. It always seems to be a hot day, and the shade was great. And I would just want to say the other thing was the location was perfect.
Oh, good.
I thought the location was great, and I don't know who takes this feedback, but I thought moving the pancakes to the back of the field was a great shift of how the flow of people moved throughout the whole event, so.
We do a big debrief and put notes for the next year.
Yeah, so just from a committee perspective of where we were and how people flowed, and then just as a citizen perspective, the same thing. I liked the.
And we had expert pancake makers.
Awesome. Well, sounds like it was a great event. Next, Coal Creek Crossing Trail. Joel, I'll let you take this one since you've been on it.
So I commute down through this trail from the bus stop, 3 or 4 days a week, and I noticed that it appears to be open. I don't know if it's a soft opening or just no fanfare because it's such a short piece of trail, but it's open. It connects straight into a cul-de-sac in Coal Creek Crossing. Trail's very soft. We need some rain, but we said that about all the grass around here as well. So I've ridden on it a couple times. I haven't seen anybody else on it yet, but it's open. It provides a connector into those neighborhoods and into original town. So that's about it.
Awesome.
And the trail is completed. It'll be shown in our pros newsletter in the next few days. And the building was completed with help from the Boulder County Youth Corps and our park staff.
Awesome. All right.
So what was it, Trail H or F? The one we completed, we said we did want to get costs on these just so we can have a history of that. Is that something you could send to us?
Well, we're still getting invoices in because of
Okay.
materials and all of that.
So when it's
type
done,
of
I'll just
stuff.
bring it up next week.
And
or
we
next
usually
time.
have like a 30-day turnaround, and then it's within our system to where you can pull it out and see.
Okay. So
Well,
remind you next week or next month? Does that work? Okay.
Are you referring? Are you referring to the Coal Creek Crossing Trail or Trail? Okay.
No,
we have it on Trail
costs
F,
for
right?
Trail
We got
F.
all that. Just
Yeah.
okay. Excellent. Okay. Standing updates. Rocky Mountain Greenway. Joel, anything new on that?
I have 2 real quick updates. I'm not sure if I mentioned this last week, but there has been a federal lawsuit that's been filed as an injunction on the progress of Rocky Flats. I don't have any update on where that stands other than it's been filed. They're seeking an injunction. I'll keep monitoring on that to see what the path forward is on that. The only other thing I'll mention is that there's September 11th Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting that's scheduled. We'll have one more meeting from then, and I'll bring that up again in case anybody's interested in attending that. I will try to attend that. They've been during the day, during the week, which makes it hard to attend for people that have jobs, but I'll see if this one follows that pattern.
Yeah. And then I think just to add on, there was, I don't know if anybody watched the board meeting from Monday night. There was a significant amount, a handful of people from the public who came and spoke to the board about the idea of relocating prairie dogs from Longmont to Rocky Flats.
Yes.
And that was also in the paper over the weekend. But everybody basically spoke against it and was urging the board to speak against it in a more formal manner, I believe.
Can I just chime in about the lawsuit? So the environmental groups filed, and the town's not a party to the lawsuit, but the environmental groups filed a motion for a preliminary injunction. That motion was denied. And then they filed a motion to reconsider, which is basically asking the judge to undo what they just decided. And that's, I believe, also been denied. So it's, and the basis for the denial was that the government said that there's not imminent construction that is about to happen on Rocky Flats. So in order to get an injunction, you need to have like a threat of irreparable harm, things like that. And the government and the judge said, listen, there is no imminent development on Rocky Flats. It's not going to happen until 2018 at the earliest. So there's no basis to enjoin anything at this stage of the game.
But could they refile then? When
Yeah, I mean,
it
things
becomes
can
intimate?
Yeah,
I guess it
things
does
can
that.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Where were they going to move the prairie dogs from? On a lighter note, where were they going to move the prairie dogs?
All I know is
Longmont.
Longmont.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Moving them from Longmont to Rocky Flats. So why was it talked about at the town of Superior?
Just because of concerns of bringing more wildlife that burrows
Burrowing.
and not only boroughs, but then doesn't stay within boundaries and could meander closer to us.
And the last I've heard about that is looking like they're going to reconsider that decision.
A lot of public outcry against that one. Okay, Shan, do we have anything new on that?
It's coming down on August 30th. They can start bringing it down, right? That's the right date?
Well, I have some more stuff.
Okay.
Woo.
Oh, good.
Newer stuff. So, we have been working on, the demolition, getting all of that information and lab testing for mitigation but our design crew kind of came in with this preliminary concept design for the trailhead and just to show it to everybody. What it could be. This is McCaslin here. This is the same entrance way that is existing. And this is really small. But some of the notes are, do you want me to read them out? Does the group want to read them?
Well,
and I could also send this out to everybody.
okay, so that upper left is coming off of Thomas Street. Then, oh yes, second bullet, right. Okay, so just a right in, right out off of McCaslin, and then the next.
And like I said, this is just a preliminary concept design for the group to take a look at.
Was the purpose for just to have a baseline for what could be looked at moving forward?
Correct.
Okay.
And this design includes a pavilion, like a seating area, bathroom. I mean, it's kind of the Rolls-Royce scenario. What, that 37 parking spaces,
Do we know how many Colton has, just for comparison? It doesn't seem like 37.
No, I'd say 20 or less.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Well, but Colton
I mean, it
has
could
that
allow
the
horse
trailer
So
area.
depending on if you use that for non-horse trailer, it's probably at 37. But it's
Yeah.
probably 20 in the lot, and then however you look at how that horse trailer is used. If there's a horse trailer in there, then you probably can get 2 of them, I think, in that section. But that's probably an additional, depending on the size of the vehicle, could be up to like an additional 10 cars, depending on how they would park.
So counting it right now, just in the car spots, it's 20 over at the Colton Trailhead,
And
plus the horse trailer
when Colton
areas.
Trailhead was designed, there is additional area that could be turned into parking, and that was always a potential consideration for that trailhead.
Yeah, I think
also.
the thing that becomes there is now that we have the additional parking in Superior 15, that's taken the pressure off of Colton.
Mhm.
That you can go park over there and get out. Allison, when we talked, this was the Cadillac. Have they come up with the other alternatives, or did we stop them there because that's what we, paid for? Because we talked about like.
We haven't gone any further
Oh, I
because
forgot
we
about
talked
those.
about the Cadillac version.
only counted
Just
down the
to
middle.
see potentially what could be there. But they've stopped at this point.
Did they put a price tag on this?
No,
No.
not yet.
Okay.
Because, depending on how many times there's comments or input given, then it changes the price every time and it continues to incur cost.
Has the board seen this?
No.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
okay. So
It's just a preliminary concept. It's not anything final or.
Whoever did this concept, is it the same people who did the Colton Trailhead?
Oxbow did this. No, this is a different.
Totally different?
This is
Okay.
a different group.
Cool. Well, it's nice to see ideas out there.
So this is what we have, so I guess we have to decide, do we take this, how does this go back to the board? Like, probably just as is, that I don't know that we would make any.
Well, I mean,
changes
it's
to it.
really, if the group wanted to make comments on it, I could send it to the group and, you know, to take a look at it, talk about it.
So I think we would have to, we could take a look at it, but we would have to do anything official in the August meeting for any recommendations. One of the things I think we have to think about, and we can talk about it more in August, is how this does stack up against, you know, the other funds that we are using.
Well,
Like,
and also the group may want to think about, you know, having it on, you know, keeping it in mind, but also looking forward to next year's budget. And if there's, you know, currently, well, this year there's a budget amount for the trailhead, I think in an out year, or next year, but it depends on different projects that are happening in town as well. So depending on
And
how the budget discussions turn out.
And I meant to bring this up when we were doing the budget discussion, because we talked about that briefly last month, about whether we wanted to make some type of recommendation for having some Shan money in next year's budget, and we kind of glossed over that this month.
Well, the group did recommend building a trailhead at Shan, so
Right.
there has been a recommendation. And that amount has been in the budget, but that, you know, it just depends on other projects and priorities of the town board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My biggest concern is that, we now are looking at the property that must not be named. But as far as just recommendations we've made in the past, whether this still rises to the level that we want to make a recommendation immediately to move forward with this. And also, there's still that huge wild card of what's going on with Rogers.
Yeah, agreed.
My biggest hesitation is, I mean, this looks fine, but I'm still concerned with the right in, right out on McCaslin, because you're going to have people go off on McCaslin, go up to the top of the hill, and make a U-E, which I think is suboptimal if we can have access to the roundabout. So if we can have access from the Rogers property directly to the roundabout, I still think that's optimal, but we can't move or make any decisions until Rogers comes forth with an application and we see if it's in there. Rogers doesn't have an application submitted yet, do they?
Not to my knowledge, and so they have existing zoning on the parcel, and that's kind of where things have been left. They came back with an additional concept and talked to us, but you know, they've got use by right zoning, at least on like about half of that property. So we don't know
what's going to happen.
I don't know. Sandy, do you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess, so I think this is great to look at. I think we should put it as more of a topic in August to go through it, because I also see, you know, one, the in and out, two, even going out, you know, part of this to make the trailhead was to, you know, ease some of the traffic in Original Town, but now if we're going to send them out
through Original Town.
Through Original Town, that might, I mean, there's all kinds of things that have to happen with this, so I think we're just seeing it now. We should, if you could email it out to us, and we should put it as an official topic, you know, more so than just even an update, but like, do put this and decide where we want to go.
And to keep it in mind that it is a preliminary concept design. There hasn't been traffic study yet. I mean, there's other things that would probably have to go along with this, but there wasn't a allotted amount to perform this design concept part of a potential project, and so we've kind of gone ahead with that without a lot of more detailed things that would have to follow.
Okay. Excellent.
And then am I still right on the date that demolition could start it could start August 30th, right? I'm not saying it is, but that's the whole date that you can't do anything to that house.
It could, but, probably anything could potentially be amended, but,
Yeah, it's just what it's been, which is August 30th.
Okay.
So I have a few updates on that property as well. So I've been talking with Matt Morris, and I've sent around to a couple of you anyway, some of his things that he captured before he left the committee, of what he'd like to see for that property, that he thought were great as part of other trailheads. I don't know, again, with the discussion we had tonight, just how much of that information to share.
I'd say let's hold off, and when we have it as a full discussion item for next month, then we can incorporate all of that.
And also, do you know, are they taking down all the trees around that house, or are they keeping them?
we haven't had a specific discussion about trees, and currently we've just had the demolition group assess the property and for a general cost and testing from a lab for to make sure that we can demolish it a certain way, or do we have to do something else?
So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
I have a lot of input for this, and yet I don't.
Let's get everybody's input and capture it all at the next meeting, and we'll wrap it up and do a nice clean area for where we'd like to go.
Is one thought, is that going to be enough time if we have ideas and things that we would like done before the demo, such as maintaining the current trees? Is that going to be enough time to actually enact that?
And I guess it would also be, if that could happen. I mean, if the trees are not entangled in something, like if there was a septic tank, I don't know, different things, locations of different things. So.
And I just wanted to add one thing. So I don't want the committee to feel like muzzled in any way. I understand why they do. But there's a difference from, like Shan Town owns that property. Town's going to do something on that property. So it's not like there's an application coming from some unrelated party that wants to do something on a parcel of land that needs to go through an approval process. The town's going to do something. So as far as I'm concerned, I want to hear any and all suggestions that everybody has, members of the public, the committee, to talk about, how best to use that property. Now, like as it kind of relates to Rogers and all that, I would imagine that the concept plan here is designed in this way because it's on the land that the town owns,
exactly,
as opposed to the Rogers parcel, which the town doesn't own. So it would be pretty presumptuous for the town to just say, I'm going to assume that there's going to be a road connection that's going to go through this parcel that we don't own.
Of course.
So, and we've already made that recommendation that anything with the roundabout be considered for access to Shan, so I don't know that we would have to say anything more than that we made that back when the roundabout went in. So I think that there are other things, like the Rogers Farm does make a difference, but I don't know that we would have to re-recommend anything beyond what we've done, which is trying to say having access to it if possible. Like the town should always consider that.
Yeah.
When they look at anything. But to your point, I don't know that we can tell anybody else that they have to. It's just been something we've already recommended to the board of, we want access there, how to best maintain that so that it's, unless anybody else feels differently about that, we've already made that recommendation back.
Yeah.
Because as far as I'm concerned, this is a parcel that we've been talking about. We own it. It's should be an amenity for the town for everybody to enjoy, and we should develop it in the best way possible, and that's going to require input from all of us to get to that point.
Yep.
So I guess the question that you asked, Tracy, is there anything that we feel we should recommend tonight just about demolition, or if that's something just that staff is already thinking about? That would be my thing. Just around how the demolition gets decided? I mean, obviously, you have all the hazardous things and all of that you guys are already looking at, but.
The committee can recommend anything they like.
I mean, it's,
Well, almost.
well, the,
So, I mean, that would be.
I mean, the pros staff is involved in this. I mean, there's an inclination towards conservation when possible. I mean, I'm sure any recommendation that we'd make about trying to save those trees is kind of already in the back of staff's mind.
And, you know, currently there isn't irrigation there.
Yeah, we asked that question before about.
So that might be something to think about too, you know, depending on if, say, a trailhead does end up getting built on that parcel, with the location of the existing trees, for example, you know, would we have to come back and take those out for the newer design and, you know, the cost savings when you're, you know, I don't know, I'm just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it runs into as they demo and they have things dug up, is there anything that is useful to do at that time with an idea that we want a trailhead, but a trailhead could be 5 years out. But if you're digging up the thing, is it time that, do we recommend that the board look at where it's feasible to say if we're digging up to remove this, when we already have the equipment there, do we lay anything at that time with the idea that, you know, it's like when you do your basement and you plumb for a bathroom because you think in 10 years you're going to refinish your basement, but, you know, you do up to a certain point, and I don't know if we want to make a recommendation.
My preference is that this is something staff can handle, but if we do want to make a recommendation, our next meeting is still prior to the demolition date, so we can still make a recommendation that should be effective at that time.
Great. Okay, that works. But that's the stuff we want to be thinking about.
I think that's something we should wrap into our whole big discussion about Shan Shan, that we can place a large chunk of time on an agenda.
It is getting close, though, so, you know,
I'm
if.
not going to be around next month.
Okay.
So the board is aware, I guess, the board's aware that we want to put a trailhead there. Sort of to your point, Ken, is how much do we, is that something we have to recommend or something they just know that to do these things?
I'm concerned about getting to the point of micromanaging. The more recommendations we throw out there, I think the less credence each one gets. The more significant, I mean, if we start getting into more minutia with our recommendations, I think that kind of devalues just all of our recommendations as a whole, because now we're starting to see more and more recommendations coming out of OSAC, and like, oh, OSAC just must recommend everything. So
yeah, I have no recommendations to make at this point.
Yeah,
we're just seeing this for the first time.
Yeah,
so what are
if
you going to
anything.
recommend?
No, I'm not even
just
talking
for the
about
demo.
this, more around the demo.
Yeah, I would say let's just leave this to staff.
Yeah.
And
We'll
I would just ask
definitely
about the trees.
Okay.
take into consideration, we always try to preserve trees or, you know, anything that we can if it's, you know, feasible.
You can always take them down later, too. if needed.
That's
Can
true.
we put it, Allison, in the notes, just not necessarily an official recommendation, but more in the notes of just, that we discussed that
a preference to
the board and the town should, have a preference of,
saving the trees.
well, not even just saving the trees, but think about, the stages of how you do something, and some things might be suited to be done at demo the way you do it, as opposed to waiting and then having to re-tear up in a year if we said, oh.
Yep.
But just leave it sort of in our notes that we discussed it.
That's perfect.
Save the trees.
Save the,
Okay.
save the trees.
And prepare-
prepare anything while you have equipment there that you think is feasible to do at that time. That somebody's thinking about it, which I'm sure you and Patrick are already well thinking about it. And, and then put this stuff on for a bigger
Discussion next month.
discussion.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Open space acquisition plan. Ryan, you want to give a update?
So, so Ken and I have looked at it. We actually have a long list of recommendations of how we want to change the document. I'm happy to read through them here. I don't know if we'll be going so fast through them that you'll have time to really sink your teeth into it. So I could email it out.
Let's do it that way.
Also, but I have just a few big questions that I'd like to ask, maybe of Allison or the group. But so I'll just go through those real quick. Allison, on the very first page, it talks about this is prepared for Parks, Rec, Open Space, Trails Advisory Committee Master Plan Recommendation Process. We weren't asked to do that for any sort of process, so we were thinking we would just remove that from the document. Does that make sense, or is this still part of a process within the town?
Well, that process, that plan has already been established.
Okay.
If you're not trying to rewrite the plan and you're just enhancing the plan from OSAC's purview, because that was ProStack master plan, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's just on it's on the title page, right there. We just I didn't understand what that process was, so it didn't seem to make sense to include this.
This is just an enhancement to the master plan, but it's the reports and recommendations of, I would think it would just be a recommendation, since, are they redoing that master plan process? Are you familiar? I'm not sure.
They are working on an update of the document.
So maybe that would be a question to work with Peter on that, to see if that would be a recommendation that would connect to that document just like it did in the past.
Okay. Thank you. Let's see. I guess one big change was going to be the approach and methodology, since we didn't have we're not having a wildlife or this environmental survey that was done at the last time. The approach that we took was very different. And I guess one thing I should say is we intend this to be an overlay over the previous recommendation, so it will be referenced in here. We're not intending to replace the document, but give an update. So having said that, that whole section will be rewritten a lot simpler, because we didn't have all of that other environmental, the Smith environmental work that was done at the time. Several appendices will fall off, the section will get shorter, and we'll just discuss how we went about our approach to evaluating the properties. The parcel map, I wanted to replace a picture of a map rather than a picture of the property. I didn't find that the pictures of the property helped me all that much in reviewing it, but seeing where it was, I thought was much more valuable. Allison, where we will need help with that is there's a parcel status section of each that talks about the open space requirement, zoning, development, annex, sales status. I'm not sure we'll have access to all that. Is that something that town staff could help us with on these 7 properties?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And probably a lot of them haven't changed.
Mm-hmm. We just want to make sure if we're putting it in the document as an update, we want to make sure it's accurate. The financial, a lot of the sections at the end we felt were more OSAC related philosophies rather than recommendations on the space, like proper ways to do open space acquisition, and we didn't, it didn't feel like it applied to the open space summary report, so we thought that would fall out. It would still be there in the old version if you wanted to reference it, but not in the update. The financial discussion was interesting in there. I think we need to do more work in there. If you haven't read that section, it's interesting. It kind of referenced it last time when we were talking about other ways to look at open space. That one is still TBD, what I think we should do there. I just think we should think about that part fairly carefully. So more work to come there. But one interesting thought, Allison, was, one thought we had, or maybe not just for Allison, but was to have a history of the open space funds available over time since it was approved, so you could just see the graph of here's how much tax was raised each year, and then a chronological history of where that money was spent. I thought would be a really interesting part to have in this document. I don't know if that's something, there's any reason not to do that. I mean, would the town frown on that, or? I mean, I guess it's worth asking before we start asking someone to collect data, but.
I can ask.
Okay.
I think it might be something that we'll need more staff help with, because we don't necessarily know everything that was spent on from that budget, but you guys probably have might have more historical knowledge, or at least my guess is Martin and Patrick probably do, with their histories being here for so long.
Well, you could definitely probably see a trend if you just look at the public
financial
documents
statements
of the budget.
Yeah. So, something we're going to want to add, but we might need staff assistance.
Yeah, we might get help just digging out the data. And I think those were the key pieces, but I can email these out to the group.
Can you also send a link to that also, so everybody can just pull that up again?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do that.
Perfect.
Yeah, so any other comments after we send it out, please just let us know, and we'll start working through it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you taking out Appendix B, or are you leaving Appendix B? And if you do, we should get the 2012 added to Appendix B.
Appendix, yeah, I thought this one was important. This
So
was the
we
whole.
need- Yeah, we need to add the 2012.
So 2012 amended this
Yeah.
from 2004?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
That's
that
she
was what
just
we got
said.
tonight.
That's what we got tonight, so we should add.
Well, no. Appendix B is talking about the sales tax that was approved to pay for open space.
Oh,
We didn't
right,
get an
right,
update
right,
to
right.
that.
That's right.
Oh,
This
sorry,
isn't
that's
this
sales,
isn't
yeah.
setting up OSAC.
Yeah.
That's in the history section.
Okay.
That talks about when OSAC was established. We don't have that appendix in here. We could. I mean, I don't think it would hurt, but.
I think we want to keep it more focused. I don't think we need to focus on
Okay, I was
that.
thinking
Yeah.
it was a replacement, but you're right. so.
And just related to this topic is, I think Patrick has received the Boulder County prioritization request for trails and open space acquisition.
Yep. So we will add that to next month's agenda as well.
So I guess the impact there would be if anything in that plan was on this list, I guess, would be how that would apply. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, typically the acquisition plan is part of that process. There's the purchase of potential open space parcels, and there's also trails that are from Boulder County properties into town.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is kind of an annual thing they always ask for.
Right, okay.
Except for last
But I
year.
don't know if it impacts this document. I think this document's separate, but it's
Yeah.
definitely something we need to cover. Okay.
Exactly. This is more along the lines of like the 5-year trail plan where
Yep,
we
I
need to make.
remember it from
Yeah.
last year. Okay. Okay.
But in conjunction with it.
Yeah, this helps. This document helps inform.
Understood. Understood. Okay, I got you now. Thank you. Okay. Well, thanks.
And then just again, real quick, we forgot to talk about it during budget. Allison, did you know the update to the money that was borrowed from the Open Space Fund for Wildflower Park? Patrick mentioned that he had something, but I don't know if. Awesome.
As the group remembers, the board approved a $2 million loan from Open Space to CIP to help accelerate the construction of Wildflower Park. The loan took place in 2016 with repayment in 2017 and 18, each year with a payment of a little over $1 million. The additional payment of $15,000 each year is interest income to go back into the Open Space Fund, roughly 1% interest. And that's generally representing the town's total investment portfolio return.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Next, COSA conference. So
Sorry, can I be a pain?
Yeah. No, please.
Can we get a total of our funds then?
total of our funds as in the,
How much money we've raised?
What's in the open space fund right now?
I don't have that specific number at this moment. That wasn't the question that had been asked to me prior to the meeting. So I don't have an update on that, but I can send it to the group.
Awesome. Costa Conference, let's just see if we can make a decision tonight. So I know Tracy said you had availability, but Joel, if you were able to get the time off.
I've deferred to Tracy for the fact that my schedule may permit it, it may not. I have a big project that kicks off in September and that I'm integral to. So if she can go, I give her full power to go. If not, then I will try to get there.
Okay. Tracy?
I can go, but if anyone else really is like dying to go, people who've been on the committee longer or whatever, speak up. So.
It's a great conference.
I've
been.
Yeah, I've been once. It was awesome, but can't go this year.
We'd love to go, just don't have vacation.
Yeah.
It doesn't work with my schedule, but look forward to going some year.
Cool. It's Tracy, it's all yours. So, Allison, if you can help Tracy get registered. Awesome. You'll have fun. One of the big things that was talked about at some length was partnerships for open space. Hopefully, like getting open space funding. So hopefully they touch on that again, and you can come back and report on that. That would be awesome. Woo! Joint meeting with Broomfield. Do we have a date certain?
I have called. I have emailed. I have no responses. I gave them our doodle poll results. In the beginning, when we first started this conversation, I talked with their director for open space, and she was open to it, suggested August, September timeframe. We did our doodle poll, and now I've communicated, and I haven't heard anything further. But when
Okay.
I do, I'll let everybody know.
We'll sit tight. And then Tract H. Things are progressing on that. There's a fence out there. I don't know if anybody noticed the work that was on McCaslin this past week. That was putting in pipes that go over there. Yeah. Allison, was there anything specific that...
Just that the connections for the reuse line are being made for irrigation, and the fence, I think, is just a temporary safety type barrier. And the stakes have been set for the parcel boundaries to help the construction company with boundaries.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any trespassers on this committee, but if you actually go out there, you can clearly see the delineation between the Frico ditch and where that 225 feet is now, and where the trail is. It's kind of nice to actually visually be able to see that now. So, just driving by, I've noticed it.
Well, there is trail up by that little body of water up there
Yep.
that you can kind of look down in there. So.
Yep.
Do we know when they're estimating it's going to be complete?
I'm not sure of the timeline on this project. I'm assuming as quickly as possible.
All right. Well, that was all we had on our agenda. Is there anything that anybody wants to bring up?
One quick comment, just as a general open space, and this kind of bleeds into park, and I'm gun shy to say this at all. It's not. I was briefly down at the disc golf championship last weekend, and lots of people talking about how great the park was, and the town, and the open space, and about what a really treasure that the Purple Park in that area was for the town of Superior, which I think kind of resonates with this group and what we do going forward, and trying to kind of preserve some of that. So thought I'd share that with the group. But lots of people from out of town were talking about that particular park and area, which I agree with. I drive by it every day and still don't get tired of that look. So.
Oh yeah. Did anybody try to? I went out and played it. Did anyone else go out and throw around or anything?
No, but that's a great idea. That would have been fun.
It's going to be available for a while, so you'll
I don't
have
think
an
it's still
opportunity.
there.
I didn't think the baskets
No,
were up
they're,
still.
They're down. I didn't see them this morning.
Yeah, they're gone already.
Well, maybe just to recoup for a period of time, they may come back out.
Oh,
So,
cool.
but it will definitely be in the pros newsletter.
Well, I had to get out there at 6 a.m. and beg the guy to let me do it. He said,
And I'll just say that the trustees have been going back and forth on how much we like that event and how this course down at Autry Park is nowhere near what the park
Mhm.
was set up at Purple Park. So we're talking about maybe doing something there as well permanently.
well, it
Nice.
was a incredibly difficult course, to say the least. I stopped because I ran out of discs. Yeah.
Was there an actual map that they provided so you can see where all the holes were?
I had to get on their Facebook page and grab the map off of that, and then I set it on my phone. But,
And I think
yeah.
there is a day within the tournament that it is open to the public for play. You just have to, watch for when that.
Yeah, he said that the preference goes to caddies first, and that there was kind of a hierarchy of who got to get out there, and that was kind of why I had to beg because none of the caddies were out there yet. So like, fine, just go. But no, it was great.
Before the tournament is when there's like a public.
Yeah. Thursday, I saw people just in street clothes out there playing when I rode through there.
Yeah, that was the caddy day. That was the day I got out there. Cool.
And I have one thing. Do we have any applicants for our one open spot?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, if anyone knows anyone that's interested, encourage them.
Yeah, we need that one lady who presented all the stuff about the mink and the wildlife.
Mhm.
She would be fantastic.
Cool.
Allison, when's our snake guy? Or do we have a second booking of the snake guy, or did we not book him?
He can come, but, and we had it slated to happen. But usually he comes when it's cooler. Like he
Okay.
wanted to come when it was cooler, so I think like September. And we have a night hike. We have bug hunt for Chili Fest in September. We have a night hike in August
yeah.
and in October. So we have to figure out, or I need to work with him on his schedule if we still want to do that.
I'm only mentioning the snake guy because I don't know if anybody saw on the 0027 Facebook, but they're quite out, the
Oh, yeah.
rattlesnakes. And somebody in town mapped where he has seen them, so lots of places around, and much closer, I think, to sidewalks and things that people weren't aware
And I
of,
think we
so.
were thinking about September last year. We kind of talked about it. So if we wanted to,
Yeah.
I think Chili Fest is September 9th.
September 12th.
12th? Okay, 12th. Maybe that was last year or
Yeah.
some other year. But maybe towards the end of September, see
Okay.
how
We
his
should
schedule
definitely
looks
think
and
Yeah.
what the temperatures, because there's a whole thing about the snakes and temperature.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was just, it just, jogged my memory because that was out today. It started with somebody's ER doctor saying that they've had an increase in the area of people
Yeah.
coming in being
I saw that
bitten.
3 strikes in the last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You have a bug hunt on September 9th. When is Chili Fest?
the 12th, I thought,
The
isn't
12th is a Tuesday.
Oh, then I'm off. Then it must be the 9th,
Low
yeah.
participation Chili Fest.
Chili Fest is the 9th?
Yep, thank you. Sorry, maybe it was last year, it was the 12th. It's all, thanks.
Cool. Well, I would say I just leave the committee with, I hope no one's discouraged by anything that was said at the beginning of this meeting, and I hope everybody still realizes that everything we do is valued by the town, and to continue with what we've been striving to do. So I'd say just keep up morale and don't take anything that was said earlier to heart too much. So with that, I think we're done.
Thank you.
Thanks again, as always. You do a great job.
I hope so. It's good. It's good. I'm glad everybody came. We had a nice big crowd.
Yeah, sorry,
today.
a few minutes late, traffic. Yeah, we were busy.
And I still throw them in that little river down there, and kids think it's funny, wading in, trying to find this, but it's fun, it's the way to get them out, doing something, maybe watching, seeing mindless, and they're throwing frisbee around, and it's cool, all these weird ways. Yeah, I know, it's cool.
Pretty impressive.
Myself for not taking the kids out to watch that.
My husband and my youngest son did it, but it was like a day, our weekends become so busy. But my boys are at camp, and they have put in a disc thing, so they're gonna play it this year. So I'm sure they're gonna come home, and then I'll be out as into the Rattlesnake Valley trying to be like, come on, stop this.
You know, it's really neat is the summer camp kids went out and been around, and some of the experts